Sweden has one of the craziest qualification stories for this year's World Cup, and despite hitting rock bottom recently, they've come back like a phoenix and are looking genuinely dangerous. And with new experienced and respected manager Graham Potter, Sweden all of a sudden looks set for another miracle World Cup. How far can Sweden make it in the 2026 World Cup? Let's talk all about it, but first, let's set the scene. Sweden is a country of just under 11 million people, up in Northern Europe, known for cold winters, forests, IKEA, ABBA, Volvo, Spotify, and somehow producing ridiculous athletes in almost every sport. But football in Sweden has always felt a little different. Unlike other countries like Brazil or Argentina, where football is almost a religion, Sweden usually carries itself more quietly. More organized, more disciplined, and that identity has followed them onto the pitch for decades. Tall defenders, physical midfielders, and hard-working teams that are difficult to break down. And for a long time, that made Sweden one of the most annoying countries to play against in the World Cup. But now, something has changed, because this new Sweden team is not built around surviving games anymore. They suddenly have explosive attacking talent everywhere. Gyökeres, Isak, Elanga, Bergvall. After many years of disappointment and failed qualifications, Sweden might finally have found a modern identity that matches this generation. Sweden are surprisingly a historically very strong World Cup team. They're the 8th best team when it comes to reaching the semi-finals. That's more than England, Spain, Portugal, Croatia, Belgium. It's really impressive. Their first World Cup was in 1934, the second World Cup ever. They beat Argentina in the round of 16 to make a quarterfinal. In the controversial 1938 World Cup, Sweden received a walkover in the round of 16, because their expected opponent, Austria, was absorbed into Germany. Sweden beat Cuba in the quarterfinals 8-0, that's an interesting one, and ended up getting 4th place at this World Cup with the loss to Hungary in the semis. The World Cup took a break due to the Second World War, but when it returned in 1950, Sweden just kept improving on its previous performances, getting its first medal, a 3rd place finish. Sweden failed to qualify for the 1954 World Cup because the Swedish Football Association enforced a strict rule prohibiting foreign-based professionals from playing on the national team. That was a bad idea because many of Sweden's top players had moved abroad. The depleted squad could only manage 2nd place in the qualifying group behind Belgium, missing out on the tournament. However, in 1958, Sweden actually hosted the tournament. Not only that, but they made it all the way to the final, one of the most famous finals of all time, Brazil versus Sweden, where the world was unforgettably introduced to Pelé. To this day, it's still the highest scoring final ever, 5-2 to Brazil against Sweden. For the next 30 years or so, Sweden would cool off, but still qualified for 4 out of the 8 next tournaments in this period, which is absolutely significant if you compare it to, for example, their neighbors Norway. In the 1994 World Cup in the USA, there was something special going on with Sweden, with a bit of a golden generation. There was a reunion with Brazil in the group stage where they finished top 2 in the group together. Sweden fought their way to yet another semi-final where they met Brazil again and narrowly lost. To the Swedes watching, surely this is a bit of a friendly rivalry at this point, no? However, they went on to win the 3rd place match and now they have 2 bronze medals and a silver. It's really impressive. Since then, Sweden have qualified for about half the tournaments, but when they do qualify, they are a tough team that tends to be quite memorable and always make it out of the group. In 2018, they actually made it all the way to the quarterfinals, beating Switzerland in the round of 16 before losing to England in the quarterfinals. Since 2018, the feeling has been mixed, with managers trying different things but struggling with both the generation change and the tactical change. Sweden went from having a super solid defensive counter-attacking team to all of a sudden being blessed with loads of attacking talent. In return, they failed to qualify for both the 2022 World Cup and the 2024 Euros. And they were as good as dead to qualify for the 2026 World Cup happening this year, which I think is what many Swedish fans would consider as Sweden's rock bottom. Sweden were in a qualifying group with Switzerland, Kosovo, and Slovenia, which is actually a decent group where you avoid a strong pot 1 team like Spain. But Sweden totally bottled it, lost 4 of the games and only managed 2 points in this group. However, because of UEFA's qualifying system and the playoffs, including group winners from Nations League, Sweden was in the playoffs. I think many Swedish fans were resigned at this point, but before this playoff, Sweden appointed Graham Potter to fix this job, and miraculously, he did. Sweden, with his attacking style, outscored both Ukraine 3-1 in the playoff semifinal and Poland 3-2 to make it to a whopping 13th World Cup. A comeback for the ages. So now that they are back with a totally changed identity, what awaits Sweden at the 2026 World Cup? Sweden have been drawn into Group F as a pot 4 team because they came through the playoff and are joined by the Netherlands, Japan, and Tunisia. Now, this is one of the strongest feeling groups with a lot of unpredictability, and Sweden is the ultimate wildcard. Japan are real giant killers, playing a unique tactical style, have great depth, and are a true dark horse candidate. Unfortunately, Mitoma, potentially their best player, has recently been ruled out with an injury. Tunisia are a common face at the World Cup and are built like a defensive fortress. They will be difficult to score on and can be dangerous on the counter. The Netherlands are going to be the group favorites, and they are the kind of side that Sweden could really struggle against. They are decent going forward and really solid and physical in the midfield and the defense. Sweden have become a fairly attacking team, and I can see them scoring in every game. I think that lends itself well towards the Tunisia game, as I don't see Tunisia outscoring a hungry Sweden, but Tunisia will punish on the counterattack and Sweden need to be really careful. Japan is a team that is built to challenge high lines and break quickly, not really a possession constant attacking sort of team that could be really hard for Sweden to defend against. This will be a really interesting game, and I think Sweden can take points from this strong side, really hard to predict though. Overall, looking at this group, I think Sweden have great chances to advance, and I would guess that they will. Let's take a look at what first, second, and third place advancements look like from Group F. In first place, in the round of 32, it honestly looks pretty brutal. It would most likely be either Morocco or Brazil again. I honestly can't decide who it will be or who would be better for Sweden. Neither sounds good. However, if they manage to win in the round of 32, they'd go into the real European side of the bracket, and the let-up will come here, as they will likely meet Bosnia, Canada, Czechia, or South Korea. In second place from this group, you meet the same fate in the round of 32, Brazil or Morocco, and then you enter what has been nicknamed the dark horse quadrant of the bracket. Next would be Ecuador or Senegal, two really tough teams, and after that it can be anything from Mexico to Norway to England. I think this would be a very interesting path for Sweden. In third, a likely outcome when you have a strong Japan and Netherlands in your group, you go into the European side of the bracket anyway, but you don't get any easier games. You start with France and then Germany if you manage to beat France. Unless there is an upset in that France group, if Norway continue their form, we could see a legendary Sweden-Norway game here. Regardless, going from certainly out of the World Cup to looking in a good spot to get out of the group, not bad. And if you're in the knockouts, you never know what might happen. With that being said, what is this comeback team? What does Sweden look like and how do they line up? Sweden have actually shifted into more of a 3-4-2-1 under Graham Potter, and honestly, it fits this generation much better. Instead of the old deep defensive Sweden we're used to, this team is far more aggressive and attacking. Gyökeres leads the line centrally, while players like Elanga and Nygren, did I say that right, float underneath him in those half spaces, giving Sweden much more movement and pace in transition. The wingbacks are also really important in this system. Gudmundsson and Svensson push high and wide to stretch the pitch, while Ayari and Karlström try to control the midfield and keep Sweden balanced defensively. And of course, the biggest weapon is still the attack. Gyökeres and Isak are both elite level forwards, and Sweden are clearly trying to build a system where they can overload teams going forward instead of just sitting back and defending for 90 minutes. Defensively though, there are still concerns. The back line is physical and experienced with players like Lindelöf, but Sweden can definitely look vulnerable against quick transitions and technical sides that move the ball fast, which teams like Japan and Netherlands will definitely expose. But overall, Sweden finally feels modern tactically. Still physical, still organized, but also now genuinely dangerous going forward. Sweden are a country of almost 11 million people, up in Northern Europe, known for things way beyond football. IKEA, Volvo, ABBA, Spotify, snus, cold winters, and of course their endless rivalry with Norway. But perhaps they should also be raised as a strong football nation with a lot of history at the World Cup. Sweden are ready. Their shoulders are low, and who knows what this ultimate wildcard can do at this World Cup, as attacking as they are. So now I want to hear from you. How far do you think Sweden will make it in 2026? Let me know and subscribe for more videos like this coming every other day. A like on the video also goes a long way, and I'll see you guys all in the next one very soon.